Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to kind of learn two different topics, very similar. But the first one is we're going to look at closely dividing a polynomial by a monomial. So if you remember from the first day this week, a polynomial is more than one term. And a monomial is one term. So you're going to divide something with a ton of terms by something with only one term. And so it's really important to kind of know the difference of doing both. And we're going to look at two examples, and then we'll kind of make a rule, and then we'll kind of move on. So the first one says to simplify this. This was like last week. We did all this exponent stuff where we expanded and we condensed. So 10 times x times x times y times y times y times y times y. And that would be over the bottom 5 and x and y. So we looked at, because they're both the same on the top and the bottom, we can divide x by x, and that will get rid of that, and we can divide a y. And so with the coefficients right here, because we have a fraction, that means to divide as well. So 10 divided by 5 is 2. I have 1x left on top, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 y's on top. So that would be the simplified version of that. Okay, I can't combine x and y, I don't know what they are. However, when you have more than one term, you have to kind of take each term separately and divide it. So with addition, that poses a problem. Here it was all multiplication, but when things are separated by addition, we have to kind of treat them separately. So what you want to do here is, this is really saying it's a denominator for this term and it's a denominator for that term. So the first thing I like to do is split these up so they're their own fractions. So I'll first write that top expression over the denominator, and then I'll write a separate fraction with that second term in it, and then I'll simplify it from there. So then I can kind of, just like I did up here, expand each term. So the first term has 4, 2 x's, 2 y's. The bottom has 2 x's and 1 y. And the second term has 8, 2 x's, 1 y. And the bottom has 2 x's and 1 y. So when I simplify this, I can cross 2 x's out, cross a y out from this term. I'm left with 4y. And I have an 8 here, and cross out 2 x's and a y, so I'm just left with 8. And so this is my simplified version there. I can't combine these, they're not like terms. So really the difference is, if you have more than one term, you have to split each of the pieces up into their own separate fraction. So when dividing a polynomial by a monomial, you must divide each term. So it's important splitting that up piece. Okay. So we'll kind of practice that a little more on the back, but that's the gist of it. The next thing we want to kind of talk about is double distribution. So you have done distribution since, I want to say, 6th or 7th grade. And so this should be pretty familiar to you. But now we're just going to take it a step further, and we're going to do double distribution, it's called. And so that's like if we have an expression like number 2, where we have two binomials that we are multiplying together. So before we do that, I want to make sure we're good with this. So if I want to simplify this, I'm really doing this multiplication. I'm really doing negative 3x squared times x plus negative 3x squared times 2. And so when I do that, 2x is here, 1x here, gives me x to the third. A negative 3x squared times 2 is negative 6x squared. And so again, these are unlike terms, so I cannot combine them. They have different exponents, so they're not like. Okay, so that is regular distribution. Now we're kind of getting into it with variables. So now, if you look at binomials, pretty much you're going to do what we did, but you're going to do it twice. So you're going to take the first variable in that first one, and you're going to distribute it to both terms in that second set of parentheses. So when I do that, x times x is x squared. X times a negative 3 is negative 3x. Now I'm going to do the other term. So I'm going to distribute that negative 2. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times a negative 3 is a positive 6. So once I've distributed everything, then I kind of look for my like terms. So I know that these terms both have an x, so I can combine them. So my final simplified answer would be x squared. Negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5 plus 6. And that would be the most simplified I could get my answer here. These are not like terms. I cannot combine them. And this is also written in standard form. The degree of my exponents are decreasing. So that was like the lesson before. And so that's really it. Just distributing twice instead of once, distributing each term. So if you flip it over to the back, this is the practice. And so there's a couple questions where you're dividing a binomial by a monomial. And then there's a couple distribution questions, and then some adding and subtracting like we were doing in the previous lesson. The challenge is not mandatory, it's optional, but if you get to it, it might be good to try to see where you're at to challenge yourself. If you have any questions, let your teacher know.